shirt now red, my bloody nose sleeping. You're on your tippy toes, creeping around like no one knows. Think you're so criminal. Roses on both my knees for you. Don't say thank you, oh please. I do what I want when I'm wanting to. My soul so cynical. I'm a bad guy. Duh. I'm a bad guy. So you're a tough guy, like it really rough guy. Just can't get enough guy, just always so buff guy. I'm that bad type, make your mama sad type, make your girlfriend that type, might seduce your dad type. I'm the bad guy. Duh. Duh. Roses on both my knees for you. Don't say thank you, oh please. I do what I want when I'm wanting to. My soul so cynical. So you're a tough guy, like it really rough guy. Just can't get enough guy, just always so buff guy. I'm that bad type, make your mama sad type, make your girlfriend that type, might seduce your dad type. I'm the bad guy. Duh. I'm only good at being bad. I'm only good at being bad.
Good evening, everyone. I'm so excited. We are going to talk about the week that Joker broke the internet. That should be an interesting conversation because it's been all week with the backlash. And then we are also going to talk about Superman getting his identity back. I honestly, I have some thoughts on that. I'm actually curious to pick Rocky's brain when it comes to that because it's a little confusing. We're also going to talk about Dan Slott, his take on She-Hulk, and why apparently that was controversial because, you know, I'm pretty sure Dan Slott has always been a little bit controversial or a little, you know, at least poking the bear. But I have wonderful people here with me. Rocky, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm doing fantastic. Thanks for having me on again. And I'm looking forward to bullshitting about all this pop culture nonsense.
Right? A dead guy, how are you?
Oh, I am absolutely wonderful. How are you?
I am good. Hooded Justice, are you muted?
Oh, I'm not anymore.
How are you?
Not too bad. How about yourself?
I am good. And I want to make sure I say thank you to Bianca, myself and comics, for my beautiful little avatar. I love it. So cute. So I love it. And Liana, how are you today?
Oh, that's the avatar Bianca had done for you. That's awesome.
Yeah,
I wonder where
I
that
love it. I love it.
I have finally gotten on the Elden Ring crack. So that's how I am lately. It was on sale. I bought it. So now I'm self-punishing.
That's your
And,
life.
What do you think, though?
I'll save my hot takes for the topics. I don't want to derail within the first 5 minutes of the stream.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah.
Kate, how are you? How have you been?
I've been fine, other than like this crazy week. I guess everything's fine. It's stable. It's whatever.
Awesome. Glad to hear it. So I can't believe we're having this conversation. I really honestly can't. But you know what? Apparently everybody thought the Joker got pregnant. Rocky, save my brain and tell these people what really happened in that book.
Well, there's really nothing to tell. Frankly, it was a random issue of the Joker. It was a backup feature. It's the Joker, the man who stopped laughing. It basically the main story involves essentially Cold Zone's version involves a hostage crisis. One of the hostages is supposedly killed, but isn't really dead, and the hostage is revealed to be the Joker, which was hard to believe because the Joker supposedly did the heist. So then we have two Jokers running around, and then in this latest issue of the Joker, we have the Joker in a hospital who ends up talking to sick children who are dying on their deathbed, and then the backup feature, also written by Matthew Rosenberg, tells the story of the Joker getting pregnant because Zatanna does a magic spell on the Joker, and the Joker would appear to just sort of, depending on how you interpret the panels, it was a silly backup. The Joker just kind of gets pregnant and gives birth to sort of a mud creature that turns into himself. It almost looks like the Joker pooped him out and
threw him up.
He pooped them out or puked them out or puked them out. And it was just a silly feature. Also, it should be noted that the backup feature was actually, it's implied that the backup feature is one of the comics that the Joker is reading to the children in the sick hospital in the main storyline. So the backups are essentially the silly Silver Age type stories that the Joker is reading to the children in the sick hospital in the main story proper. So it's kind of a really odd thing for writer Matthew Rosenberg to do, but I never paid any attention to the backup. In fact, when I reviewed it with Chase, we review all the comics every week. We pretty much ignored the backup and said, it's just another silly Silver Age Joker backup. And I didn't even realize the Joker was pregnant until suddenly after the fact, everyone was talking about it. So I don't know. I think it's much ado about nothing. I'm really curious I don't understand. It's a slow news week, even in pop culture, when we're talking about that. I'm at a loss to explain why it's so fascinating to people. Really, I don't know.
So here's the thing of what I realized this week when it comes to this whole Joker not being pregnant. He wasn't pregnant, first off. He puked up a baby. I've never seen a woman do that before. It was a Clayface baby or Clayface thing, I'm assuming, that was magic, right? I've never seen people
homunculus
so hard put on their own ideology onto something that wasn't there. Like, they were trying to say that Joker was now trans. And I'm like, did we read the same book? Did you read the book? Like, there was so many questions. It got to Fox fucking News.
No, I don't understand some people. I don't know. Like, I can't even imagine that if you are the member of, you want to create news for if you want to, why would any trans organization or LGBTQ, I can't imagine that they talked about this. It's nonsense. It's ridiculous. Like I said, I feel so completely the wrong person to talk about this because I'm at a complete loss as to why this seems to fascinate some people. But so, I mean, I'm curious as to the other people's views on the panel here, because I don't see any trans stuff in this, but maybe others do. But
Liana, I gotta ask.
Yeah.
You read the story?
I think I've heard everything I need. I mean, I agree. It was just a silly backup story. I mean, it's like edgelord Silver Age kind of stuff. You know how they just do the silly, like, all right, we're gonna do a what if kind of thing, and they're doing it I think precisely to get a reaction, because when male pregnancies it's not the taboo it once was, but it's still one of those ones that is a taboo within fandom. I know that back in the hardcore fanfiction.net days, that was a line that people got really upset if you crossed. So I think there was some bait there.
Oh yeah.
But I also think that taking the step of this happens, right? Like every time there's any sort of gender bending, somebody says the character involved is trans. They did it with Metroid because during the development process, they changed Samus from a guy to a girl. Now all of a sudden she's trans. No, that's process as opposed to, fictional biography. I get people, because there aren't a ton of trans characters, some people wanting to see themselves in it, and that's cool, right? If you want to make that your headcanon, awesome. But it just seems like people are losing the lines between what you want to say about a character so you feel like they are like you and what actually is. And people get a sense of self-importance. They get a sense of identity out of freaking out about this stuff. And the comic book companies know they're going to do it now. And so they do it for, it used to be called controversy, but now it's called earned media, right? So I get why they do it. I ultimately think that DC would do well to just go back to telling good stories like they did in the Elseworlds era, but I know they got to keep the lights on and the doors open. So every so often something like this is going to happen.
Let me get this tip from Robert. Thank you so much. In my honest opinion on the Superman secret identity, we will get there, I promise. I enjoy it. It makes sense, and also made sure that there was more of a negative side effect to the secret being put back. Heroes are safe because they have the psychic projection, and Kent's house had a force field of projection. I really like some of the Lex lines in that book. So I promise we will get there, but thank you so much, Robert. The whole thing with, you know what? I'm going to let other people get their opinion. Dead Guy, what do you think?
The Joker pregnancy. Honestly, I'm kind of leaning towards what Liana said. I think it was definitely, I hate to say it, but I think it was definitely a ploy.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody with how everybody freaking out about it just played right into it. It played right into it. Either way, They're selling the hell out of those comics now. Especially now that Fox News got a hold of it. I don't know. This is partially the reason why I've avoided newer DC, just because of everything that I've heard from when I found your channel and the people just kind of backlashing on the Tim Drake thing, and then now this. It just seems like, to me, I'm just wondering if they're even interested in writing good stories anymore, or if they're just putting stuff on paper and sending it out there just to sell books and get attention for it. That's what I'm really curious about. Like, where
to
are
be
they?
fair here, the main story's good.
The
main story's good. It's the backup stories that even I noticed from the very beginning are like a Joker that we've never really seen, like one that's very pining after women, one that is a little bit off character. It's very Silver Age. I mean, there's nothing else to say. I like this though. Quasar, Venom, Carnage, all mere characters who actually got pregnant, but this is what they freak out over and makes headlines even though he wasn't actually pregnant. Yeah. It's pretty much kind of how this goes. And I heard people saying it was a Me Too story, that it was, trans ID. Hooded Justice, what do you think?
To be perfectly honest, I don't care. This doesn't trip my trigger. This story, I'm a grown up. I can walk by it. I don't have to sit and talk about it. I'm pretty good with my masculinity, so I don't, it doesn't really matter to me about a pregnant Joker. I can go on with my day and not care. That's for people on Twitter and everything else. So that's, to be honest.
I just want to say the comment that, Hooded Justice, I mean, you're like, I think 95% of all us men when we hear this, and women too. But I have to say, in all seriousness, this is the type of publicity that keeps people away from DC Comics. And as
Oh,
somebody
yeah,
who loves
definitely.
DC
Oh,
Comics,
yeah.
it drives me absolutely insane that there are so many wonderful, really well done, well written comic books, and we're trying to, I want more people to read comics. And when I hear, comment like your comment, Dead Guy, about, you hear things about DC's got a lot of good comics.
And
And
they just don't get
I want
attention.
people
Absolutely.
like yourself to be
Yeah.
encouraged to go and try out different comics. I can promise you there aren't men getting pregnant in most of the comics.
Exactly.
I mean, it's just absolute nonsense. And when I see groups or people with whatever groups or just this type sort of nonsense, I don't even know if there's a particular group or whoever has an agenda or media is that desperate for news. When this is the stuff that comes out, it's not harmless. So I appreciate comments. I agree with Hooded Justice. This is nonsense, everything else, but
Yeah.
it harms comic books.
It does.
Who's
It really
gonna pick up
does.
a comic book. It
Yeah.
harms it, and it pisses me off. And so I'm off my soapbox now.
I mean,
No,
because,
that's why I
I'll-
push. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was gonna say I'll buy the comic book for the story. If it's has a a backstory that I don't dig, then I just won't read it. You know what I mean? Or if I do read it and don't like it, I'm not gonna go on and make a huge deal about it. If it doesn't ruin my day, I'm not gonna make a big deal about it.
And that's, I think, why I pushed so hard back on the idea that the Joker was pregnant, because it is irritating. Because I like
It's
last
false
week we did-
advertisement.
yes, for one, it literally was just a mud throw up, magic induced, and then on top of that, you've got good stories that people aren't talking about.
Mhm.
Like even last week when me and Hooded Justice did the besties, there was all of those stories are amazing, but you don't see you've got like Comic Breakdown and Cape Joel and some Comic Storian and some people talking about it, but something like this is going to overarch any good story and make the brand look bad.
Engagement, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's frustrating because I mean I have some
Just to make it clear really quick, I'm not being an asshole when I said that or being putting anybody down. That was just my personal opinion. Sorry, Liana.
I think it was totally fair to say, because I wish more people would take that position of I don't care. You don't have to care about everything, and everything that personally upsets you. The number of things I roll my eyes at on a given week just because of it. And I do think I've started to step away from people who are perpetually outraged, because I agree it's a race to the bottom. And it's gotten to the point where people whose opinions I used to respect are doing diatribes on Twitter now about how comics have to go back to pandering to young men to save them from guys like Andrew Tate. It's like, when did comics ever pander in stories of heroism? Like the word pander, the fact that everything is so skewed now in the idea that it's a pander, everything's cynical. Every time they do something like this, that's alleged proof in the minds of people like that. It's the exception that proves the conspiracy. And I do get why companies, they want to make money. They want the quick buck. I think it's a sign of poor management at Warner Brothers, because I think comics at this point should be tell good stories, experiment, give us the movie franchise that's going to make us $1 billion in 5 to 10 years. Just don't lose too much money. I don't think comics should be something written for profit now. It's just too valuable as a development think tank to be pulling stuff like this. Like, hey, can we start workshopping interesting stories for new characters? Because, hey, James Gunn can't rewrite every single D-list backup guy's story to be interesting. I mean, there's an example of a guy who that's his skill, right? He makes people care about characters nobody cared about before by making them individuals. I mean, Drax the Destroyer and Ratcatcher. That's an achievement. He's the reason people care about those characters, not the comics.
And Polka Dot Man.
Polka Dot Man.
He was awesome.
He was awesome. But
It was brilliant.
And I was really excited for Suicide Squad and Polka Dot Man because I knew it was going to be awesome because it's James Gunn. But there shouldn't only be one guy who can do that. And yes, I'm crossing the streams with movies and the floppies. But the floppies used to tell good stories. I used to be able to defend the Big Two comics as being as good, if not better, than movie plot lines. Because, movies have the benefit of just being able to refine and streamline 3 decades of stories into sort of the core of the character. And it's just become such thin gruel because they're doing this stunt shit that I actually liked what they did with Tim Drake, but then of course it got so eclipsed by Son of Kal-El that it kind of fell apart. It was a good start. Son of Kal-El was a good start before it bought into its own damn hype.
See, and there's a lot of what you just said that I completely disagree with. I don't think you're saying you used to be able to defend the Big Two. I think there's a lot of good. Well, I don't read Marvel, to be fair. I did pick up Black Widow #1. That was really good. But at DC, the majority of the books are still good. The majority of what they're doing is still good.
The ones nobody is paying attention to are good. But yeah, how can I talk somebody into trying that out? Because comics are friggin' expensive, right? Now, how do I talk somebody in when they don't know what's going on? Because everything's a fucking dark something crossover. And then they see this stuff. They don't believe me when I say, no, the bulk of the output at DC is stuff you've never heard of and is actually very reasonable. They see this and go, this isn't... There's a difference between... I mean, let's face it, with the Joker, should anybody be freaking out about anything the Joker does? I think that's kind of the point of the Joker.
Right.
But
he's an agent of chaos.
Yeah.
Chaos incarnate.
Yeah, and it's the way it spreads like wildfire over the internet that is the problem. And because I think at this point they have to know that there's going to be this reaction, they do it as bait. It just seems... Because, of course, then you got people who are convinced that, I know I'm jumping the gun a bit bringing up She-Hulk, but they think the She-Hulk Disney Plus show is a conspiracy against men because, of course, they all know they deliberately bait the fans. And then something like this happens, and I get these people going, see? And it's like, you're talking completely different creative teams and significantly less money, but they don't listen. It's this weird war of the industry between the industry and the reader base, and I'm just exhausted by it. I can't care. I thought Hooded Justice said possibly the most honest thing. He was all us going, this doesn't trip anything. I don't give a fuck.
Yeah, I don't.
It's apathy. I think a lot of us are extremely apathetic, and so we're harder on the stuff that's perfectly fine just because we're tired.
How do you empathize with something that big, though? Like hundreds of the thousands of writers. Now you've got corporates pulling their strings, telling them what stories to tell. It's like
it does seem very top down, doesn't it?
I think it's more management to blame at this point, not giving the writers and creators enough.
You don't get those stories that felt like they were pulled out of a drawer because somebody was late on art. I kind of miss that. Those quirky little Silver Age stories that they just held on to in case someone was late.
Greyhawk example. Greyhawk came about because they ran out of green ink. That's how Greyhawk happened. Like, well, we ran out of green, so we colored him gray. We had lots of gray.
Wasn't he only gray for one issue, anyways?
There was Greyhawk for a little while after that, but that's
was there? Okay,
that's how it started. So I'm like, that's genius, though. They ran out of ink, improvised, and it was like, oh crap. Well, we have something here. People apparently like Greyhawk with a crew cut. Yeah, we do. It was cool. Thank you.
That's the magic of somebody like Stan Lee, though, right? He was just so joyous about everything that he could sell the crappiest concept. People forget how weird Daredevil was when he first premiered. Like, he was in that yellow suit with the pink lettering, and who would have thunk it, right? But I think the whimsy is what gets gave a lot of that stuff a pass. People, it's funny that we're talking about the Joker because I spend a lot of the time going, why so serious about everything? These stories are inherently silly and fun, and you're not supposed to think about them too deeply. But now everything is relevant, and I don't want it
a critic.
to be. Yeah, everyone is suddenly an armchair sociologist. No, can we not do that, please?
Well, there's always it's funny because there's always this. I always feel a little bit foolish when somebody asks me to defend, like if I like a comic and they ask me to defend it.
Yeah,
I often find myself in a situation where I almost make a fool out of myself over defending what is essentially just a very simple story. And I'm the type of guy, whether I like it or not, I tend to overanalyze something. So the more I think about it, I overanalyze it. And so I can overanalyze a comic book to death and take the fun right out of it. Now, maybe I enjoy doing that for me, but that's the problem with comic books. You know, somebody hates something. If somebody doesn't like something, okay, you don't like it. But the propensity that some people have to insist that I'm wrong and not liking something and will go out of their way to overanalyze it. Tell me I'm wrong. Tell me I read something different. Tell me I misread this. Tell me I misread that. Well, no wonder nobody's reading comics. I mean, it sounds like a chore. And it sounds like it sounds like homework that, oh my God, what if I read this story and I don't like it? Am I supposed to like it?
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, is Big Brother watching over me? I mean, it's reaching that point now where, especially as somebody who reviews comics all the time, the arguments I get into are kind of a little bit silly after a while. And like I said, in this culture, you gotta have a thick skin, and you got to throw on the hood like Hood of Justice and say, you know what, I just don't care.
That's right.
You know what? The exact opposite too. I have people come in and trying to argue why I shouldn't like it if I do like something.
Yeah.
And it's like, the art is subjective in nature anyways. Sure, there's a difference. You know, you can usually decipher who's a better storyteller, things like that. But you're going to relate to each individual character differently. Rocky is not going to like Catwoman the same way I do.
Right.
And that's okay.
Let's face it, Tristan, what we get is an element of nerd checking, that perpetual guess thing of, oh, you're a girl, you don't know what's good. This is for you. And
let me explain this to you. No, I've been reading comics since I was 8. I got this. Don't worry.
Yeah, as soon as I feel the need to say I have been reading comics since blank, or somebody asked me to defend a preference, I walk away from the conversation now.
Yeah.
I'm just not going to. Fuck off. There are cosplay pictures of me that are older than some people reading comics right now. Just piss or go fishing. I do not care. You know, there are pictures of my ass older than the lower percentile of the DC reader base. I don't have to earn shit from anybody. You know?
Now a bunch of people listening are Googling
Leanna,
there it is.
Or you get shit like this.
What?
I get this kind of shit all the time. And I'm like,
people have been saying that as long as I was showing my ass in cosplays. It's like people who predict the decline of Nintendo. It's real easy to say the world is ending, and then when it doesn't, just
the comic book industry is dead.
Google Frank Cho Leanna K butt signing, and you're welcome.
She's just like, here you go.
And then people start telling me they're fake, they're photoshopped, they're this. It's a fucking convention photo, people. Who's gonna Photoshop that shit? But this is, people don't want joy. They want to take everything and make it controllable, because if you just, you know, kind of surrendered to the giddiness and the silliness of a character like Plastic Man or Mr. Mix's Pitlick or Kite Man or anything like that.
Kite Man is awesome.
Yeah, but you're engaging in whimsy and you're engaging in joy at that point. And that is when the crabs start trying to pull you down in the bucket and say, defend it. It's like, I don't have to. It made me happy. It gave me a chuckle. Yeah. Fuck off with your misery.
And by the way, the what I got out of the Joker story, and Jason and I, another reviewer that we reviewed it, we talked about the main story. That Joker story, that Joker comic where Joker was pregnant in, I thought it was a decent story where it was just Joker in a hospital speaking to children that were terminally ill, looking at a comic book that told stories that were the backup. I thought it had humor. Some of the humor everybody may not have liked it, but there was dark gallows humor, as you would expect from the Joker.
Yeah.
I thought it was moving in different parts. I thought it had an ending where the Joker, a woman died. The Joker pretended to be this dying woman's husband, and before she passed, she said goodbye to her husband, and she dies before the Joker escapes. I thought those were scenes that I thought had some degree of gravitas, and so that's what I took out of the story, which, I thought it was much better than people are focusing on the pregnancy of a obscene Silver Age backup. That's what blew me away about it. And it's just almost depressing because the actual content of the comic book that I thought was maybe worth reading, people are completely ignoring it now because of the nonsense of the backup. And I question whether or not the backup should have been in there anyway, but that's neither here nor there. I mean,
I question
silly.
all the backups, to be fair.
Comic books can be silly. I mean, I'm not going to fault a comic book for being silly. I mean, whatever. Anyways.
I think
you're so quiet.
I know. I've just been waiting for everyone else to finish their sentence.
I love it because I saw the timeline of Kate's brain this week where she went, "Oh my fucking God, what is this? Oh, I realize what this is. Never mind, guys." It happened in real time.
Same. Okay, I guess I should talk about it as well, considering my brain was like, wait, what the fuck is this shit? Okay. When I first saw the image on Twitter, that was the first area where I saw it. My first reaction was, is this photoshopped? Is this a fan fiction gone weird? Is this from a Silver Age comic book? I don't know. I don't know why they would put that in, considering the laws at that time, but I don't know. So I did some digging, and eventually I came across an article that talked about it. I forgot the title when I was making the video. I was I just was reacting emotionally a lot, or annoyed or whatever. A lot of people seem to do that a lot when something like this comes along. Now, I was just, when it came to that, I guess I was really reacting with, okay, I need to jump onto the bandwagon so maybe, people can hear me, and lots of people were doing that. People tend to do that too. It reminded me of the early 2010s when you would find these images from God knows where, you don't know where it came from, and everyone would speculate. And I saw a lot of people speculating it, even though after I did my research, I was like, shit, I seem like a bigger idiot than usual. Why the hell did I not look way into the title than I should have? Because now, looking at it now, it's just okay, I reacted poorly with rushing to it, making sure I talked about it, and now people I think I gave people an example of rushing to conclusions, and after you figure out what's the reality of it. But okay, after that, it was my reaction to the whole comic books as itself. I did find the main story very interesting. I won't lie there, because I do love the addition of Harley Quinn and Red Hood, because those were probably my favorite scenes in the series so far. So, but the backstories, I was just okay, this is definitely Silver Age inspired, because those are what I grew up with. My dad would bring home lots of these older comics, stuff nobody would really want, and that's where I learned how to read. I blame Superman's girlfriend Lois Lane. Those were my go-to shit.
That's so cool, though.
And
that's where I felt like it was mainly inspired from that specific timeline, because during that time you could get away with anything. So I feel like it's kind of a Silver Age in the comic book universe of the comics, but maybe my brain's just going way into that. But it did remind me of one of my favorite cartoons growing up, which was Johnny Bravo, which every example in the past series of the backstories, it just felt like, okay, is this another episode of Johnny Bravo where he's trying to get the girl and he didn't? Because a lot of people literally took the Power Girl and Big Bertha situation as being canon, even though it's just this is just a made up story. in the
Right.
comic book world. They don't know any information about these characters outside of the basic information that the Joker wouldn't know about these characters. So it wouldn't really connect well to being the main canon because of all that. So it gave me more information from where I first started to now, and I'm like, I feel like I've learned a lot this week.
That's so crazy you say that because you talked about learning from Superman, learning to read. I thought it was so cool. I don't know if you guys saw this week, Congressman Robert Garcia was sworn in on the Constitution with Superman #1.
That was awesome.
That was really cool.
That was so awesome. And also very awesome that Kate just totally threw off the maturity curve on comic book discussions on Twitter by saying, wow, I should have looked into it before I reacted. Kate, you're just gonna throw everything off now. People are gonna.
You're gonna be a successful YouTube streamer. You're gonna have to not know what you're talking about when it comes to comics.
I already know half the time what I'm talking about.
Just go straight in on emotion. Who cares what the reality is of the situation? Stick to the narrative, Kate.
Look at one picture, make an hour-long video out of it. One picture.
Though I will say I had the exact same reaction Kate did to this too. Do you remember that What If Miles Morales series?
Yes.
But I actually went into denial that it was even real because it was there were jive talking
by Odin's
crows.
Fade.
Yeah, but jive talking crows. And I was like, there is no way they did that. They did. But I'm so, and I think that's another thing. People are so worried that they're going to get fooled that everything's really cynical now. And unless they are told exactly what they are expected to take from a book and exactly how they are supposed to react, it's like they freak out because they don't have enough confidence in their own subjective opinion. And that it's okay to be subjective. And some of these things, there's no right or wrong.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. And that's the thing I go back to all the time is if there's something for everybody at DC for the most part. And if there's not, you're going to find it at Image or you're going to find it at Dark Horse or Merc Magazine. DC, even with great stories, and I think it's pretty much unanimous that most people are enjoying World's Finest. That's one title I can say I haven't heard a whole lot of complaints about.
Are people reading it?
That's what I was just going to say.
Yeah.
People aren't talking about it.
Because there's nothing to complain about.
See?
That's a good point.
That's sad.
An old-fashioned book.
Silence is the best compliment in that case, I guess.
But the problem is these things tend to go about 7 or 8 issues and then get canceled because there's no outrage. It's the same way the lowest rated Disney Plus show was Ms. Marvel, the Kamala Khan show, because there was no outrage over it. And that was a really good show. I don't know how
it was a really good show.
I don't know how anybody can complain. It was light, it was cute, it taught a bit of history, but no outrage. And so it ranks significantly lower than, and I mean, it was lower budget too. It was just a setup for a character, but she's the reason I want to see the Marvels now. And I agree. That's an example of a show that was a very loyal interpretation of, the first 12 issues of the comic, but some of the rough edges, they streamlined, sanded off, they improved on it. And so both are good, Somebody can pick up the book based on the show and not be horribly disappointed.
Right.
And yet
I felt Netflix Daredevil was that way too, though.
The first season of Daredevil was excellent.
Following Frank Miller's telling was really smart. Really smart.
Yeah. The first season of Netflix's Daredevil was excellent. And then it's like they started rushing the writing.
I feel that way about Gotham, but nobody agrees with me.
I didn't.
Gotham was so good.
Gotham was good, but
Gotham was what it was. It, they were very clear that it was sort of a reimagining, and
they were reimagining without a mustache. Where was Jim Gordon's mustache?
Emo, cute boy Penguin was the weirdest one for me.
Oh my God, no, it was great. Shut up. It was great.
I didn't say it was bad. I just said it was weird for me.
I've never known that I needed an emo penguin that was in love with the Riddler, but I got it and I loved it.
I just don't need every guy to be pretty, like Twilight vampire pretty. I don't want that.
I agree with you.
Yeah, I just
That's fair.
don't. And it's just selfish that's not. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, okay, I totally see it, but I don't know. I want the penguin to kind of be penguin shaped.
Yeah.
You know, but that's the sort of thing where those origins have been retold so many times that if I don't like something about it, blink, there'll be another one coming along soon.
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's just been done and done and done and done. Like, how many times do we have to see Martha Wayne's pearls falling?
Yeah.
Right? It's like pagan.
That's fair.
Now. These characters, and I think this is part of the reason we've hit the freak out misery part of it. This is basically a pagan god pantheon for a lot of people now. They worship these things like it's a religion, and so they've lost their sense of humor about it.
I think that's a really good way to put it, because I was this week, because I streamed and I clipped my streams and put them on my main channel because I'm trying to work up my backup channel because YouTube hates me, to be perfectly honest. So
yeah, YouTube's being stupid where you're concerned.
It's absolutely ridiculous. So I clipped part of it, and I had people from like Ethan Van Sciver watching and reacting to my videos.
Oh, really?
All week. It was this nonstop controversy because I dared to say that literally in one panel, he goes, "Oh, I guess you weren't pregnant after all." Pointing out the facts of the situation got me harassment all week. And I was like, okay, fine. You know what? More views on my videos, more watch time. You know, this is what I'm going for anyway. But holy crap.
But
if you are
argue there,
bunch of idiots.
That's just her. They're a bunch of seals right now.
And it's like I've read comic books my whole life. Do you think bullying me now is any different than when I was bullied back then? Like, I'm gonna make it through, guys. I'm gonna make it through.
Got a lot more friends now.
Again, people thinking about starting up, having their opinions about comics, they're going to see that and they're going to go, is this worth it? And for fuck's sakes, people's opinions on Batman just aren't worth that.
It's not that serious, man.
No, it's really not. But it got me, at least a while back, to the point where they were looking me up in the past and trying to dox me like, this is comics, guys. It's okay.
People do that to me over J.K. Rowling shit too.
Oh,
it's
God.
ridiculous. It just becomes this. I mean, these are people who the only friends they have are through these groups that are devoted to what they oppose. So all they can talk about, they need a villain of the week.
Right.
So that it's like, you know, the reason Loki is the MVP of the MCU. The Avengers wouldn't have come together. They just would have been fighting like assholes if he hadn't have shanked Coulson. You're welcome. Loki saved the fucking world. Like it's just, and the fact that they put that in a movie, I'm like, wow, okay. On the one hand, I understand why it made $1 billion. Joss Whedon perfectly channeled nerd logic. But on the other hand, this isn't heroic. Oh, you need some personal loss to stop being assholes to each other? Come on, guys. Like,
too much realism there.
Yeah, philosophy,
Yeah.
what? You know, like, whatever. They killed our friend. Let's be friends now. Because that works.
Yeah, I totally get it. It's amazing to me to see this, such a silly little thing. And honestly, I don't know where you're at with it, Rocky, but have you been enjoying most of the backups anyways? Like, I've gotten to the point where I skip most of them. I'm not in, like, they're just not interesting anymore.
Well, I agree that, well, if you're in most of DC comics, the backups, I'm not generally, I'm not a big fan of backups. I think they just, at this point in time, they just sort of add to the purchase price. And I don't think they add anything to the main narrative. And it's sad. For example, Wonder Woman has a backup of young Diana, which I think is really, really good for a younger audience, but it's completely displaced and out of
Yeah.
sync with the main storyline, and it's an odd place to put it. I understand why they're doing that, but so there's questionable marketing decisions. So it's not that even the backups are bad stories, although probably an argument could be made that most of them at this time probably are. But even if they're good stories, it's still problematic, utilizing it. But I don't have, again, it's the jury is out. They got to be good, and at least with, for example, in Batman, when we had with the Batman 131, with Batman being on an alternate Earth sent there by Toyman's weapon used by Failsafe.
That was so good.
The backup told the story of Toyman of supposedly allegedly killing himself and the weapon. So it was the backups related to the main story.
Yeah.
I can see that, but beyond that, the jury's out on that. As Liana has said, comic books are pretty darn expensive, and you got to be very careful if you're going to put a backup. When people buy Batman and there's a backup that doesn't have a lot to do with Batman, that's people are going to get a little bit upset. Even if you buy a Joker comic with a backup that Joker's pregnant, it's kind of hard sometimes in this day and age. We're not the Silver Age anymore. This isn't the 60s. This isn't the 70s. People, when comic books were 10 cents and the, different inflationary period, people didn't bitch about the price of comic books, but now they do, and so it's a different world. And whether we like it or not, it's a different culture too.
Who's writing the backups now? Because backups
In
used
which
to
book?
be, well, in general, backups used to be the way for new writers to get, published stories.
Screen time, basically.
It varies right now. It varies. Sometimes sometimes it depends. The main writer in Batman is writing the backup as well.
Right. That's what I
And,
thought. I just wanted to make sure. I didn't want to talk out my ass.
Right.
I know I'm doing it wrong.
That's right.
but-
And the person writing the backup in Joker is the same writer, Matthew
Yeah.
Rosenberg, as well. And but again, it's I don't know why, if the backup's related to the main story, why not incorporate it in the main story and not have it be a backup? It just seems silly to me. But
there's this weird imitation of the Silver Age without understanding the Silver Age right now, and I think that's part of it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Like when Superman turned into a tree. I remember reading that when I was a kid, and I'm like, this is awesome. I want to be a tree now. Again, I was 8, but
that's one of the greatest Justice League covers ever when they turned into trees. It's so stupid, but it made me want to read it.
Yes. And I do think there's room for silliness like that. Like, I have no issue with the backups being silly. But I do think like I really liked the Chip Zdarsky one when they were doing the Penguin storyline with Selena when Penguin had died and she had to go find all of the heirs. And I thought there were some really good storylines, but there's a point where, like with young Diana, are they collecting that and making that a trade for kids? Because that would be perfect.
Yeah, that would be a good idea.
In fact, they are. In fact, they are, and they have actually. They already collected the first trade already of the backup of young Diana. They've done that. They've done that. Yeah.
Well, I knew I had the first trade. I just didn't know if they were doing it again because I don't ever read them. I think they're cute, but I to be fair, I've dropped off Wonder Woman. Oh God, I can't take any more Becky.
Well, that's a separate topic, and I'm not going to. I'm not going to go there because I could talk a long time, and we're not talking about that topic. But we should do a live stream on that. That's a topic for another day.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Wonder Woman getting kind of tired.
That's
an understatement.
Specifically about Wonder Woman getting kind of tired.
Well, it's just right now. I think it's lacking a direction, and I think
I agree with you.
Although the one thing Wonder Woman Historia, I love the first 3
Oh my
volumes of
God.
Wonder Woman Historia. I absolutely love that.
I read that because you recommended it. It was interesting.
Yeah, and I still would like to do I'd love to do a live stream, Leanna, with yourself and Tristan and anyone else who'd want to join.
I would love that.
Talking about that series because I think there's so many interesting, just the interesting angle it approaches to the character. Yeah, for sure.
And this issue 3 came out.
It up, you have to give it time. Don't judge it on the first 2 books, even because it's all set up.
Yeah, and in this issue 3, the art. Like, I like Jean Ha's art. I did, but this art went back to just a work of a masterpiece. It was just looking, and that's for another time. But oh my god, it's so beautiful. I don't.
Nicola Scott's art you're talking about.
Yes, absolutely stunning work.
She needs more work.
She does.
Undervalued as an artist in comics.
She is, yes.
Yeah.
Her and Jen Bartel. I will stand them every day of the week. I love them. So let's move on a little bit. We talked about Joker. I want to talk about the secret identity stuff because I think this is quite possibly the smartest thing DC has done in a while when it comes to Superman. Like, I love Warworld Saga. I loved the way that Philip Kennedy Johnson did that. But 1050 leads us into, it has like 3 different endings, to be fair. And then it leads us into Superman #1. And finally, Clark and Jonathan now have their secret identity back. This is what Bendis should have never taken that. Bendis should have never taken that away.
Yes.
I thought it was silly.
That was the only thing when you said it was the smartest thing they'd done in a while. It's like, is it smart or are they just correcting the stupidest thing DC
That's
has done
fair.
in a really long time? Because that was dumb.
That's very fair because I love, and my favorite part is how base Batman is when he's like, Lois has just now become Superman's wife. All of her Eisner's, not Eisner's, but all of her work she's done, she's just been downgraded to Superman's wife, and I'm like, based. Like,
damn.
Yep.
Like, that's what she became, and now she's finally got some agency again. And Lois is a decent character, depending on who's writing her. Like, she deserves a little bit of identity, but what a justice. Are you pro or... Wait, would it be pro or con? I don't know. Are you for or against secret identities?
Oh, they should have the secret identities. This is the first Superman book that I've read in a while. Jump back on it just to check it out because I knew we were going to talk about this. So yeah, I think the secret identities need to be there for safety of everybody, safety of everything, and also just for them to have their own well-being, because even though they're superheroes, you know, make fun of me all you want, but they got their mental health also.
Yeah, that's fair. I thought it was really cool how they did, how they kind of did it, even though I really started to enjoy Manchester Black again. Like,
that was messed up how they did that. Yeah.
He's dead.
They
Fucker.
totally used him.
I mean, I get why they did. The thing I was more upset about when that is that Manchester Black was actually like a plant when it came to Lex.
He was like a what?
Like a plant, like a mole.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I was like, well, okay, I get it. He's always been kind of an anti-villain or whatever you want to say, but Superman having his identity back is probably up there with like things that must always be. Like, Batman needs to they all need their secret identity so they can have their home life. And then we can watch both sides unfold. Like, the part where John walks out with his coffee was really simplistic, but I thought it was really well done just to show, like, he's happy again. Like, he doesn't have to worry near as much anymore. Because they did that whole, like, it was issue 2, I think, of Son of Kal-El, when he was wearing the blonde, horrible wig, trying to have a secret identity.
Yeah.
Like, why make John blonde? Okay, all right. But yeah, I think this is really smart. What do you think, Rocky?
Oh, I think it's brilliant. I'll be very blunt. I said this in my review, and I'll say it again. I could care less. I don't care if this was the worst written storyline on the planet. I don't care how they undid the secret, the revelation of the secret. I don't care how badly written it is. Undo it. Undo it. How many storylines do I bitch about as being terrible? But I got to live with it. Yeah. You think I can't live with them restoring the secret identity? Of course. I don't care if the story is terrible. I don't care if people hate it. I don't care. It's done. It's finished. It's over. We got the secret identity back. Now, having said that, I'm on a little bit of a rant here. Now I obviously come from a very comic book bias. The best stories, the secret identity, the dichotomy of Clark Kent and Superman is so important. It's integral to the character. It's even, in fact, it's a triangle. It's Kal-El, Clark Kent, and Superman. It's all three.
Yeah.
When you disrupt that, and now my one criticism, and this is really nitpicking, but my one criticism is that Superman has no choice. Reluctantly, it was taken out of his hands. I had a thumbnail behind me here where I have a check mark on Lex Luthor because Lex Luthor's my hero. Lex Luthor at least was true to himself. Lex Luthor knows the truth, and that is, you're an idiot if you don't know that your secret identity is very important. Then I will kill Manchester Black just to prove it. And that's what I did. You're welcome, Superman. You're welcome. I just protected your family. I just made your longevity and stories more interesting. Thank you very much. It took a supervillain to do it. And so I say that's sort of tongue in cheek, but that's how I feel. It's much more interesting now that the secret identity is back. And you said it, Tristan, you said it with John Kent now. I think it even makes the idea that John Kent now, okay, we got him being bisexual, his sexuality, but even more significant than that, as a way to add to that, the whole idea of he gets to play. It's better for John Kent as well, because now that he's out sexually, his orientation is known, but now he still has to deal with being in a closet in a way, but with his own identity, his actual identity. So they get to play with that as sort of an analog to the bisexuality, to being in the closet. So it actually adds to the character and the future storytelling potential of John Kent. There's so many storytelling possibilities because now he knows what it's like to be in the closet and come out, or to have the fear of that and deal with that. We got that. I thought Tom Taylor did a reasonably decent job of character work in that in his run. And now, John Kent he's got that secret again, but he's got that luxury of being able to redefine himself as whoever he wants. What job is he going to have? What does he do? I would say, what the hell does John Kent do? What does he do for a living? Mm-hmm. Does he have a job? Does he go to college? He just flies around in tights? Does the guy even own a pair of blue jeans? I mean, I don't even know. When's the last time we saw John Kent in blue jeans other than when he was 7 years old or 10? I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, again, as I said before, I overthink these things, but the storytelling potential on these things is enormous now. So
I think Robert makes a good point though here when it comes to John. The conflict of people knowing that. Wait, how does that work out? I'm trying to work it out in my head. That Jay and Superman are a couple, but not Jay and John.
I can't wait to see how that unravels.
Yeah, like that sounds like a train wreck waiting to happen.
This is what I mean. Storytelling potential.
There's
the drama. That's what makes it worth reading. It adds those extra elements there.
Oh, and then all the Clarks. There was a lot. Did you watch Smallville by chance? Anybody?
I did watch it.
Like, if you read this issue, did you see a lot of like Smallville shit out of it? Like the multiple Clarks dying and having Val-Zod show up. That was a storyline in Smallville. Also, what's that?
So you can't tell me they don't go back and look at the old stuff and try to mix things together and get new ideas out of that.
Yeah, of course they do.
And then what Lex said about feeling alone, and when he was younger and he could have known all along that this was, it felt so Smallville to me, but not in a bad way, in a very like wholesome way.
Nostalgic.
I liked the way they built up to Lex and Clark being antagonists in Smallville. So, giving Lex Luthor some humanity was one of the parts of Smallville that I enjoyed.
Yeah, that was great. Seeing them like that, the bond between them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you watch the jealousy just rise in him.
Well, the shitty father, and seeing that villains. The challenge with writing good villains is to make them human, not just mustache twirling. Oh, I'm going to be evil situationally, whatever. No, they have to have a core, right? They have to have core motivators, just like heroes. And one of the things that I always found disturbing about the whole John Kent thing is the way they were making teen, LGBTQ sexuality something they were doing for cameras. and things like that. There's being out, and then there's having no boundaries. And I was disturbed because it was the same problem I had when, what did they do? Ultimate X-Men, where they had Jean Grey and Logan in bed together when she was like 16, 17 years old. I'm like, whoa, that's not...
He's way too old for her.
Yeah, too young.
Hal Jordan, they did the same thing with. That was a really weird situation too.
Yeah. God, I forgot about that.
I thought of that when they did the whole John Kent thing. And, I said on this stream, he's 17-year-old. He's a teenager. He's not a man yet. Those are precious years. He's getting robbed of years where he's figuring out who he is by being a figurehead and an icon instead of an individual. And maybe they'll explore some of the damage that does when teenagers have to perform their sexuality for the world instead of having the privacy that a secret identity allows them. He's allowed to have his own life now. Everything isn't for the media cameras or what it means to the movement or something like that. And I know it's an unpopular take, but because Superman lived with a secret identity for so long, I thought his reaction to his son being like way out. There's in the closet, there's out, and then there's out over your skis. And to me, John Kent was out over his skis. And it was sort of disappointing that Clark didn't give any caution at all of, no, you have to hold a bit of yourself back here, son, because of what it does in the long run. It just felt like they were signaling an ideal instead of the hope for the better tomorrow, not the better tomorrow here today. It just felt like it lacked some, I guess, ground truths, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, the fancy word is verisimilitude. It lacked verisimilitude.
Maybe.
You make an excellent point, Liana, and that's so true. But I mean, that would have just pissed off the LGBT community. It would have pissed off the wrong people. It would have been bad publicity. Had the storyline been that way, it would have been considered, oh my God, you're saying Superman is negative. Superman's against his son. Superman's homophobic. They wouldn't be able to put enough lipstick on the pig of that message, even though it's completely realistic. I agree with you.
But why?
I would have loved to have seen that, but
why can't Clark, as a straight man, be supportive and not be totally understanding? I found that kind of disappointing.
Because it's Clark Kent.
But there was an opportunity for them to do what they've done with other things with Superman of like, look, I don't get it, but I can still support you. I can give you the opportunity to talk. I don't have to talk for you. And it just felt really, I agree. I think they were a bit worried about people not giving the story a chance to unfold. Because let's face it, nobody did. The minute like issue 7, issue 8 came out, everybody went to their corners. But I don't know. I found the Tim Drake story, it felt more real, it felt more relatable, and it felt more like, I don't know what this is, and I don't have it all figured out at 17. I don't quite know who I am. Let's dumb this out together. I think that in terms of, and I think it's different. I'm reading it as something that reflected my experience when I was younger. I think other people are reading these books for the experience they wanted and didn't have. And those are two completely different ways that come in at these stories, right?
Yeah.
Let me get this tip real quick. Tavia, thank you so much. Question: with the secret identity finally being restored and Bendis stuff finally going away, do you think John Kent will ever go back to normal? Because if the secret identity can be restored, why can't Tavia?
The Super Sons. Bring back the Super Sons.
I feel so bad for you, man.
I do, and I love the Super Sons, and I know you have hope, and it's amazing you still. I'm dropping my mic. Okay. It's amazing you still have hope, but I just don't see if they didn't do it after Dark Crisis, I don't see it happening. Unfortunately, it would be great. Why can't they do more prequels?
Yeah.
I mean, they did
That would
one.
definitely help build a better modern look at the DC universe, because
wait,
there's
they
a lot
are.
of information that lacks, and then you have characters from decades past who haven't been used for a while. Lilith Omen. And then
Yeah.
you're supposed to surprisingly let the character in, and you don't get any information, and then you see other characters who are like a part of the team, or like some kind of comic, and they don't get too much information about their backstories, or like what they're doing in their like time outside of being a hero. I mean, like, look at Donna Troy. When was the last time we've heard anything about her job? No.
Yeah.
No, nothing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, you're right. And I
There's a
think
lot
with
lacking.
with the Super Sons, they're doing at least there's that I think it's Dan Jurgens in Action Comics. They're going to be bringing in that story of when he was young. And I know it's not much, but it's
something.
that little thread of hope, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I'll take it.
And I like older John Kent. I mean, I've been pretty open with that. I liked Son of Kal-El. I thought it was a good book, but I believe I'm probably in the minority when it comes to that. And
okay, let's face it, most of the people opining very strongly didn't read the book.
Hey, I read the book.
So yeah, I don't think popular opinion matters on this one.
Yeah.
Oh, there's an interesting question there by Derek Johnson. I still don't know why John couldn't be bi and still be a kid in the comics. This is something a lot of people will definitely go at you with, like, be like, oh, but he's a kid, he can't react in that kind of way. But there's never been that much representation in that kind of thing to show, hey, yeah, maybe at a young age we discover, hey, maybe I'm bi. I don't know. Maybe in future years I'll figure it out. I have no clue.
And we got robbed of that story though from Bendis.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I mean, I knew like the moment I seen Hanson, I knew, like, I was like 10 and I'm like, I love those boys. Like,
I was going to ask the band.
Yes.
They looked like a bunch of girls anyways.
I mean, to be fair, that is true. But I was just like, at that age, at least a lot of us do. So I get it. But if Bendis had done John in a better sense, maybe. But as of right now, I don't see it happening. Super Sons, the movie, great movie.
Mm-hmm.
But I just don't see it happening.
I don't know. I mean, DC tends to turn on a dime lately. So never say never, right?
That's true. Yeah.
They get desperate and think there'll be money to be made about something. It'll come back.
It scares me a little bit, though.
Oh, I am just getting back very fits and starts on Big Two Comics over years of being like, I'm going to wait 3 years for the stories I like to come back, because they always do. It's always this 18-month to 3-year arc where they break shit only to put it back together. And I'm tired of it. It's gotten really old for me, and I don't want to be that grouchy, cynical person who just complains about everything. But I dipped into the Flashpoint stuff and I couldn't.
What?
Yeah,
I like
Flashpoint Beyond or just Flashpoint?
all the grim, dark Thomas Wayne stuff.
Oh, I love it.
Just really, I mean, I'm burned out on Batman, and that was Batman with 3 times the Batman, right?
That's true.
Batman.
And so it was just not what I was feeling. And so did I go on a big tirade about how much I didn't like it? No, I just stepped away.
Wait, you're telling me you didn't make 17 videos about it?
No.
Oh, okay.
I know, I'm doing it so wrong. But it's just, I don't know. There has to be, because then it's this whole thing about mature content, right? And I think if we want truly mature content, we have to show that we're mature adults. And I think more and more,
that's not gonna happen.
Yeah, the dialogue around everything, but especially comics, is not rewarding mature adulting. And so I just sort of step back. I'll make jokes about it, but I'm going back and reading like late 80s to mid to late 90s stuff, and I'm enjoying the hell out of it.
That's where I'm at right
and
now.
it's like, okay, yes, that was sort of my golden age for comics. Not quite, a little older. I mean, strangely enough, I'm such a DC person, but I started with Spider-Man. And so, yeah, well, no, I started and then came on to the good stuff, right?
There we go.
And so I don't know. I'm going to go back to the stuff I like instead of demanding the stuff that is not for me be for me.
And I think that's fair.
Yeah,
I really do.
I am not the demographic in any way that comics is looking for. I can disagree with that and still accept that it is so. And when they decide to write books that I find relatable and feels, because there's the difference between, I'm not all realism, but I do think comic books, as silly as they are, should speak to human truths. And I think in all the sensationalism and all the shocking and the flying eyeballs and all that stuff, there's a certain human truth that gets lost in the stories. And
you gotta be able to relate.
Yeah, you go back to this, to the older stuff, and that's still there. And I wanted to see if I'd been imagining it, and I wasn't. There was still a humanity. And I think partially because that's before the boom happened. And people were writing comics because they wanted to write comics, not writing comics because they wanted a film or TV show out of it.
Yeah.
Also, I want to make a quick building on what Leanna's saying. I just want to clarify something and this is, I'm really nitpicking here, but the backup story in The Joker is not actually a Silver Age tale. The appeal of a Silver Age was that it could tell silly stories that actually had profound messages if you read them. If you actually read them, they were ridiculous stories, but there was always some sort of truth that Leanna's talking about. You could find some inner wisdom and truths in the most silliest, nonsensical stories. In fact, that's mythology. A lot of mythological tales are absolutely absurd. When you think about what's actually physically happening, they're absurd, but it's the message of the stories that matters. That's what they captured with the Silver Age. What we're getting nowadays is silly stories that are masquerading as Silver Age stories, but they're not. They don't have a message. They're just plain devoid of message, devoid of anything, of any kind of substance. And that's why I say, and that's why the advice is for anybody. I say with ego. Anyone who's read a lot of comics as I have, I say with ego, buy what you love. Buy what you love. You buy what speaks to you. But the only way you're going to find out what speaks to you, you're not going to find out on YouTube by some guy like me telling you what to read. You got to go to a comic shop, or you got to go to a chance. You got to reach out. You got to buy it. I mean, that's just the harsh truth.
Yeah. Because the strangest things will connect with you, right?
Yeah, I agree. And I think, what is those backups? How many more is there? There might be some for a found story, but I can't imagine what it would be at this point. With what we've seen so far, I honestly can't. I don't think... I like Matthew Rosenberg. His stuff's okay. His DC vs. Vampires and some other stuff has been pretty decent, but then he's either hit or miss with me, to be fair. Like, that's pretty much a miss. So that brings us to... What the hell happened to you this week with Dan Slott, Liana? I gotta ask.
Shit. Oh my God. Okay. Prefacing it by the fact that Dan Slott has been nicknamed Slotto Blocktavius for a reason.
Oh my God.
But the dude, it's this run-on thing. Every so often I find out I've been blocked by Dan Slott. And I've never had a bad word with the guy. It just, every so often, he goes on this block spree, and I guess somebody tags me in something, and I get blocked.
You lucky girl.
Every other fucking time I've done these, like, let a friend know if you think you've been unblocked in error. And every other time, I bent the knee. Because it's like, I like his Spider-Man. I like some of his stuff. It was upsetting that he blocked me. But then fucking She-Hulk happened.
Oh no.
And Dan Slott has been dining out on the fact that one of the main arcs, it's Burn and it's Slott, right? The series. And he made this comment about, his latest block spree was about people being snarky and trying to be funny. And it's like, you fucker, you're dining out on a show about a snarky, angry, opinionated woman, and then you block us in real life and expect us to beg you to take us fucking back? Fuck you. You were a Josh and a Trevor from that show, asshole. I'm done. Like, you can't just lionize tough, strong women when you can control us by literally putting words in our mouth. Like, Tony, how can you sleep around and not be called a skank? Like, any woman knows, she would know why. She wouldn't have to ask the dude she just banged in a casual fuck why it's so. Like, holy shit, dude. Fuck right off. You got lucky. Learn from the thing that is paying you money right now.
Wow.
And just stop. I am so done. And I'm so glad you guys are amused, because to me, that was the purpose of the She-Hulk show, to just go over the top with the horrible shit and laugh about it. Because it is really frustrating. And I did find that show was really validating because of guys who consider themselves allies, like Slotto Blocktavius. But then the minute he gets his ego bruised, I'm going to drop a bomb here. Then he can invoke male privilege. Because let's face it, if any woman goes on a block spree like that, they're going to take shit for it, right? We constantly have to show how tough we are and that we can take criticism. And a guy like him is not helping by allegedly flying the flag, supporting women, and then doing shit like that. It just, enough. Wow. Enough. The nice thing about the MCU is that with shows like Ms. Marvel and She-Hulk, women actually are the intended audience. And so we don't have to beg for scraps anymore. And I'm just done with guys like him. Like, it's not personal about Dan Slott. It's just he's the embodiment of the thing that pisses me off right now. The same way I feel bad for guys named Josh because of She-Hulk. Because that dude is
Leanna, can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Because I know that Dan Slott, I have a question for you, because I'm a little bit lost, because Dan Slott defended the show by saying, well, it's the most accurate comic there is.
Yeah.
And I know that you really like the show.
Yeah.
And yet you're at odds with Dan Slott. I don't quite understand. What did he say to you, or could you elaborate exactly what was the point of contention? I didn't quite catch that.
Well, he blocked a bunch of people.
Yeah.
And wants those of us he blocked to beg for him to unblock us through a proxy. And you can't say She-Hulk is completely comics accurate to what he wrote. Look at how Jen Walters was there, and then block somebody like me, and then want us to beg. Because Jen don't beg. Jen don't beg, motherfucker. Jen is the queen of the non-apology apology.
She said motherfucker.
And the thing they did change in the show from his comics run is her character voice. She was a lot more, I don't want to say docile, but I go back to that scene with her and Tony Stark again. It was like this doe-eyed, why is the world the way it is? And every woman who dares to say yes to anything sexually knows why she gets labeled a skank and a guy like Tony Stark doesn't. That conversation would not happen. That was him kind of virtue signaling on the character. And these guys and women too, but in comics with writers, it's guys. You gotta walk the walk, fellas. You don't get credit just because you got a book adapted and, what's her name? Jen Gao just slammed it on the dialogue. You don't get to take credit for that. That was new. Listen to the show. Stop backpatting your own fucking genius.
Yeah. When you say Jen Gao, you mean that's the head writer for the show, right?
Yeah, the Family Guy alumnus who took so much shit.
Yeah.
And the reason she took shit is because she did some very biting humor at hard things. And I guess this is a tweet. Of course, I can't see it because fucker has me blocked.
You know what the weird thing is here is I agree with what he's saying here, It's the fact that he invokes the "I am the most expert in this" card.
Yeah.
That reads wrong. Like I don't necessarily agree 100%, but saying that it wasn't comics accurate isn't exactly accurate either. I do think it is comics accurate. Yeah, you're right. The voice was changed a little bit. She felt a little bit more pessimistic, in my opinion. But
I think based on the world, she was really accurate. But yeah, she was certainly less naive than in the comics. She knew what was happening to her. She didn't like it. She was sort of railing against it, and that felt more real to me than some of the stuff. Some of the stuff in the comics, as much as I really like what Byrne did, even his stuff sometimes felt like, yeah, this is a guy talking through a female character. There's a certain lack of understanding where you kind of roll your eyes and go, okay, nice try, but you didn't quite hit it there. And there's no shame in that. I mean, it happens sometimes when you see women writing men as well. But and he's right. It was pretty accurate to the comics. They had to adapt it though, right? Because the way you do a fourth wall break in a TV show is different than in a book. And I think they got an updated spirit of She-Hulk, but it was definitely more the John Byrne, she gets fired for photocopying her butt She-Hulk. And it's like, how'd you know it was me? Jen, it's a color copier, right? Like, it's that sort of, she's not necessarily making the best choices all the time. And you can't say, I've read every episode of She-Hulk and it's totally comics accurate, because let's face it, the portrayal of the characters careened wildly from interpretation to interpretation. There were versions of the character they totally threw out. He's saying it's comics accurate because they picked his version. Right? Oh, it was Dan Slott. Okay. But like, they picked his version of the book and they flat out said it. And I always wonder how much it helps when a guy whose work has been adapted comes out and defends it as accurate. Because, you know, they accurately signed his name on the check. Maybe there's an ulterior motive for saying this. I'm torn. I appreciate what he was trying to do. I think in a lot of ways he's the wrong messenger precisely because of his own behavior. And that's the challenge that shows like She-Hulk attempt to address, and people get really touchy about it because it's that whole scene where Bruce Banner is trying to be helpful and Jen does not take it well in the first episode, right?
Yeah.
I loved that scene.
I did too. I love that. That was my favorite. Well, that and the last one were my favorite.
But I loved it because she was somewhat in the wrong there. She was understandably in the wrong, but she was not nice to him. Mm-hmm. And the number of fights I've had with guys about whether you were supposed to see it as her being flawed in that moment, I got so tired of it. Because who's the authority about how women fuck up? Me or some dude? I fuck up a lot. I'm an expert. I've read every issue of women fucking up. It's completely comics accurate to women fucking up, right? It's the whole discourse on this show is so fucking tiring. And Dan Slott blocked me, that fucking motherfucker.
Wow.
I mean, think about it. How would Jen Walters react to Dan Slott blocking her? Exactly the way I am. She'd swear at the writer.
Yeah. And break the fourth wall. And maybe even the app.
And maybe even the app. Which is why I don't understand why a guy who purports to support strong women would be Slotto Blocktavius. Because sometimes you just have to let it pass. Right? Like, don't block everybody that hurts your feelings. Women don't get to do that, man. Just come on. Like, if you're gonna help. It just, something about it feels self-serving. And maybe I can't quite put my finger on it. It's about Dan Slott. It's not really about defending the show.
And then the cynical brain in me goes, why is the conversation coming again? That has been over for
Well,
a
that
while
too.
now.
Yeah,
Are they
too.
trying to get up like people talking about it again to get a season 2? Like, that's where my brain goes, because it doesn't make sense had he said it during any of the weeks it was showing. Had he said it at the finale? Nope. Now randomly the first part of the year.
I just think he's not dialed in. Everything is personal with somebody like that. So somebody said something that he took exception to, and he kicked the hornet's nest again.
Like I actually don't have a problem with blocking to a point.
I don't have a problem with blocking. I have a problem with mass blocking.
Is that where you just like block everybody that follows you?
Well, the first time I got blocked by him, it was because he used a block list. And so anybody who got put on this radical feminist block list was just, persona non grata. And that was another one where you had to beg to be removed. And I just don't beg. I don't. Once you start doing that, you cannot come out of that muck. And so if people want to block me, they can block me. But if they're blocking me, think I'm going to beg for them to take me back? No fucking way, man. Like, life's too short. Like, I'm sorry, who are you? You know?
No shit.
Like, okay, you're a comic book writer with some stuff I liked. That's nice. You could be a shitty human being. I ain't begging.
Dan Slott, he's like the Trevor in the She-Hulk movie. He's sort of like the a-hole guy, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, the guy who thinks he's good because he's woke, because he's buying Wakandan artifacts. It's definitely that energy, right? The I'm an ally.
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that made a lot of guys feel quote unquote attacked, is that every person has done something that She-Hulk made fun of. That's the whole point. Like there was plenty that hit at women too, but that didn't hit guys in the fifis, so they didn't see it. That whole PJs at 7 p.m. on a Saturday thing and your friends thinking you're a loser for it. Like, yeah. I own my Saturday 7 p.m. pajamas, but a lot of people don't. A lot of people feel like, oh, I'm a loser.
I do think, Leanna, though, the part of the problem that I had with She-Hulk, and I love the Daredevil episodes, but part of the problem I had overall with She-Hulk is it spent a lot of time. There's a lot of Jennifer Walters was a well enough developed character. She had a whole slew of insecurities. She made some mistakes in her dating life, and she made understandable mistakes that we've all kind of been there. Well, okay, I'm not a woman, but we've all sort of, I remember past mistakes and everything else.
Right.
But everybody was making mistakes. Everybody was in the parody of the show, in the breaking the fourth wall. Just when I always felt that just when the show had something meaningful to say, we went to the next joke or went breaking of the fourth wall. It was never just when I was interested or invested or there was a hope that I could get invested in the story. It went off somewhere else. There was another joke to tell, and everything was treated like everyone was like a parody. Everything sort of felt like a little bit like a joke to me, so that there was no main narrative where I could really hang my hat on, and it never gelled for me. I mean, I had wonderful moments with Daredevil, and there were some touching moments between Jennifer and I thought Matthew Murdock, which I really liked. That was my favorite episode, but the rest of it just never gelled for me. And I do have a comic book bias. I bring that to the show, yes. And I did want more of a narrative that was a little. I wasn't a fan of breaking the fourth wall. And I would say to Dan Slott, was it comic book accurate? Well, look, his comic book, Dan, your comic book broke the fourth wall. That isn't rocket science, Dan. It's easy to do. Anybody in a movie can break protocol, turn to the camera, and say, "Hi, Mom." Guess what? That's not genius. Okay, that's not storytelling. That's like, I've got nothing better to do. I want to say something else. Hi, Mom. Look, we're breaking the fourth wall. Look how intelligent we are. Look, what are we trying to say?
It's lazy.
All your completely fair criticisms of the show were the same things that happened in the comic, and that's why I think the comments are interesting.
Well, in his comic, and my point is,
John Byrne did it to an extent in his run too.
Yeah.
right? Like and I do think they threw the ending. If you're gonna go revenge porn and bail out of it, that's worthy of criticism, right? Because they didn't actually say anything about the fact she was a victim of revenge porn, other than
They
it made her
never
angry.
addressed it again.
Yeah.
That was the biggest sin, in my opinion, is they did the revenge porn and nothing mattered. It didn't matter.
I agree. That was the one big, ooh, maybe shouldn't have gone that way.
Big deal.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal in a woman's life. And it's just oh, she's over it. God.
And how nice you got to rewrite it. That's not life for anybody else ever, right? And but I mean, that is a weakness of the comics. And so, it's accurate for better or for worse. And that's when we get into the discussion of how much should an adaptation loyally adapt the source material, and how much should it try to improve on the source material, because one person's improvement is another person's like, no, I liked it better the first time.
Right.
It's a tough one. Yeah. But I mean, yes, absolutely. Everything Rocky said is accurate about some of the weaknesses in the show. It had serious Rick and Morty style pacing problems. It was just exhausting, especially those first 4 episodes. But that inability to really sit in the emotion is a problem the comic has from time to time too. So maybe there's some emotional immaturity there that transferred over. I don't know. But Dan Slott, he's right. It was very accurate to the comics. Some of the flaws in the comic transferred over to the show. So that is not me disagreeing with Dan Slott. There we go. I agree.
And I think that, so just coming from like a perspective of having a YouTube channel, I do think blocking is necessary in certain regards.
Oh, I do. But
I can't ever picture myself going, okay, I don't like Ethan Van Sciver. Here, I'm going to block everybody that is subscribed to him. Do you know what kind of damage that could do to there are people, just like the whole anime versus manga thing. You can enjoy both. You can be fans of both. And there are certain times when it's needed, whether it's doxing or somebody just being downright disrespectful to guests, but if you're just going on to ward off criticism, I don't think that's ever going to. One thing that's so great about criticism on my channel, real true criticism, not you're a woke SJW, Tristan, real true criticism, is it has made my channel better. There are people that have come to my channel and said, the audio fluctuates. Here's what you could do to help that. Or your thumbnail didn't catch my eye and I missed your video. Stuff like this actually can be very useful. Criticism. And he's missing out on all of that.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, that goes into the whole She-Hulk thing of, was it making fun of trolls or was it making fun of fans? And unfortunately, too many people treat every critic as a troll, and they're not. And that's another reason why I think Dan Slott's behavior, if he really wants to support the show, it has to improve, because you need to be a good ambassador of this.
Right.
And a guy who treats every, like, I never directly engaged with him. That's the weird thing. I was clearly
that is weird.
Caught up, but it's the third fucking time. And that's why I'm done. Like,
I just want to add that the difference, one of the key differences between the comic and the show is that the comic, She-Hulk was always making fun of Marvel Comics, was often doing that. Whereas the show poked fun at, it did poke fun, and it was well intentioned. It poked fun at everybody. It poked fun. Yeah. But unfortunately, you know, this is why I think that it was really bad decision making in the writing. Because they began writing She-Hulk. They already knew we lived in culturally divisive times. I don't, for the life of me, I can't imagine why they thought that the type of parody that they created and the jokes that they were telling, I thought it was just it was very poorly made. I thought it was the wrong decisions were made. Is straight up. I thought overall it was just badly written. I was hoping for I was hoping for a show that delved into something that Bruce Banner,
Bruce
the
Wayne.
Hulk. Yeah. But like, one of the things that we were robbed of with the Hulk in the MCU was we never really understood the relationship between Bruce Banner and his anger. Why was he so angry? And the most telling one line sold us. Why did we love the Hulk? Is because in Avengers, when the Hulk, before he smashed that alien, he looked at, I think it was Captain America or some other character, and said, "That's my secret, Captain. I'm always angry."
Mm-hmm.
And we instantly knew what he meant.
Yep.
Because all of us we got anger in us. And I wanted to see that from the female perspective. I wanted to see, how is Jennifer Walters different with her anger than her cousin? How is that different? And how does that play out in her job?
I think every woman
and
who
I
watched
never
the
saw
show
that in the
felt
show.
that. Oh, that was there.
Well, I
But
guess
that's the thing.
I guess I missed a lot of it because
But that's the thing. Female anger is so shamed and demonized by society that we do need to sublimate it. And men don't see it. Guys like you guys literally do not have the decoder ring to know what they're doing. And that's why I thought it needed to be talked about. And I mean, it's tough when you're doing comedy, right? Because when do you sacrifice the joke for the point? And when do you sacrifice the point for the joke? And it's very subjective. And I mean, I don't like Rick and Morty. I don't like the pacing. I don't like the style of humor. And so I went in sort of bracing myself for the heavy dose of that we got. But I do think that, and see, it's all, they antagonize the fans.
Yeah.
And that's the point of view of a male fan.
Right.
It's not the point of view of a woman in the public eye who has to deal with that shit, not just every day, but sometimes every hour of the day. And I do think that got lost, what it's like to be on the receiving end of that. And you know what? You do have days where you just want everyone to fuck off. It's just everybody, it doesn't stop. And I really think you need a certain amount of empathy and a certain amount of understanding to know what it's like to be in that place. Because it's not everyone, right? It's not every single comic book fan does that horrible shit. But unfortunately, it's become so synonymous with fandom that people took it personally. And I don't think that was intended to make fun of fans. Because if you actually read some of the streaming comments, it's very clearly making fun of like comments fashion bloggers get and things like that. There were some that were AOC jokes.
Oh my god!
But isn't all that blocking by Dan Slott? Isn't that telling me you have a small dick without telling me you have a small dick energy? I mean, really?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, if he's backing a show,
I mean, come on.
About this, women have to take this crap.
Yeah.
And if he'd actually been following what people have been saying about the show, which clearly he hasn't, right? I mean, and that's fair. That he's not going to sit there watching the internet. I think that's crazy making. But everybody the funny thing is that people are getting so wrapped up in their anger at the show, they're not accepting what the show is saying about Jen Walters' anger. They're not willing to accept that, a lot of women who have to take this shit, they're angry.
Yeah.
And sometimes that makes us irrational. And sometimes that makes me go, fuck Dan Slott. I'm not begging again.
Why would you have to beg?
Well, that's the thing. Is that a bit of an exaggeration? Sure. But the third goddamn time, like, enough.
Yeah.
Am I being particularly mature about this? No. But I'm pissed off. The guy is flexing his power, right? He's flexing the fact that he's a guy with a name, and some people will beg him again and again and again. And no, I shouldn't. We shouldn't have to. There's too much begging in the world. Enough with that shit. And so many people are continuing to
small dick energy.
Well, yeah, and I believe that women can have small dick energy too, for the record. I do not believe that small dick energy is about your actual dick. But people are contributing to the cycle of anger instead of breaking the wheel, so to speak. And I find that very interesting about the reactions to She-Hulk, just because whenever it's comedy, somebody's going to miss it, right? I can tell you numerous things I just don't find funny and other people think are hilarious, right? Anything by Seth MacFarlane. I don't get it. I think it's mean. I think it's really bad. See, that's the thing, right? I could tell you all the reasons why I think his joke constructions are terrible, why Family Guy is centered around 90 seconds, it's relevant, and the rest of the show is filler. But other people love it. Right?
I love it.
See what I mean? Other people love it. And so I'm very hesitant to say something, especially when it's comedy. When it's drama, there's less subjectivity because it's easier to make someone cry than make them laugh. It's easier to make someone angry than to make them laugh. And so I think that I totally get why She-Hulk or Family Guy or any of those shows are not to someone's taste, but I'm not willing to say Family Guy is bad so much as the behavior of Seth MacFarlane makes me question whether some of that stuff. Well, there you go too.
I know. I remember that episode way too well. Also,
it makes me question whether the things he does are all in good fun, or whether he is actually settling some scores. I mean, that thing he did at the Academy Awards with "We've Seen Your Boobs," so poor taste.
Oh, with the girl that plays in Hunger Games, right?
Yeah, Jennifer Lawrence.
Yeah, that's not cool.
There's some underlying evilness there. I mean, come on.
And that's the thing. I can't think that it's just a joke when a guy does something that mean-spirited.
Yeah.
And so I understand why the conspiracy theories around She-Hulk are compelling and why it would be comforting to some people. But at the end of the day, we do have to start accepting that a lot of women are angry in the way Jen Walters is for reasons. And that doesn't mean our behavior is perfect, and that doesn't mean it's right, but it is understandable. And if people in fandom want their anger to be treated as valid, you have to do it to other people, right? You have to give other people the same benefit of the doubt, because I don't think anybody with a straight face is saying that the trolling that show is making fun of is acceptable behavior. Yeah. And if you are, well, that's just not reasonable to ask people to get on board with, And
I want to add something you said earlier was, so when it came to She-Hulk, there was a lot of really good commentary on what it feels like to be a woman.
Yeah.
And not older, but I mean, 30s,
yeah.
There was a lot of really good commentary on the frustrations that you go through that you have to shut up about, or you're going to get, just for an example, before I debated EVS, right? He had said something like along the lines of, "I'm not going to date you," or something like that. And I'm like, this is how you treat women. Yeah. This is how women get treated. And it's a constant thing. Anybody that agrees with me as a white knight, or anybody that, has my back, only does it because, she's not going to fuck you type behavior. This is the thing.
Yeah.
That show took a really good glimpse at what it's like to be frustrated and not be able to say it. What it's like to be angry and have to keep it in. What it's like to want to just Hulk out, so to speak.
Yeah.
And have to shut your damn mouth or you're going to get called names.
Yeah.
And I think not most, but a good portion of the audience that watched that went, "I'm not listening, I'm not listening, I'm not listening, I'm not listening," and stuck their fingers in their ears.
All of a sudden, they were being asked to shut up and take it for a while, and they couldn't deal. And I think that's really telling.
Yeah.
It's really telling that all of a sudden, the male audience was on the receiving end of Seth MacFarlane or Rick and Morty type humor, and it hurts. And instead of going, "Oh, this must be what is making women so angry," it's just a reaction.
Yeah.
And I think that people are allowed to have that reaction. It's fine to say I feel attacked, but let's have some empathy too, right?
Yeah,
This is
right.
what women go through. It's not an exaggeration to say sometimes every single day.
Yeah. Or
and then if we say
a couple
anything
times a
about
day,
it,
unfortunately.
and if we say anything about it, we're labeled bitchy or PMSy or, oh,
Yep.
she just needs attention or she's an attention whore. You
Yep.
can't handle. It's all the dismissals. And I'm fine with people having that reaction. I'm fine with people saying this made me feel really, really uncomfortable. But I wish once you say that, can we please get a moment of empathy and please
Or understanding why
that thing that this show made you feel, women in this space feel all the time.
Yep.
It's Leanna. I'm compelled to say something because it makes I understand what you're saying, but one of the things that didn't translate well with She-Hulk is that it was obvious that when I initially the first 4 episodes, we meet Josh. He's her manipulator boy. He's kind of Josh is this nice guy, but he's manipulating her. Trevor is kind of the a-hole.
Josh came in at the wedding. He was a late ad.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But he was nice, and then the nice, but Josh was a manipulator. He was at the wedding, right? So I'm mixing my names up. Probably the best guy was probably Matthew Murdoch. He was
there's
sort of
Pug too,
right? But
everybody forgets Pug,
right? Well, but I guess my point is that you're right that in many ways, and I think this explains the disconnect because I was watching another YouTube channel just randomly, and it was two 16 or 17-year-old girls absolutely loved She-Hulk. I mean, they were fawning over it.
Aww.
And they were talking about how much they can relate to Jennifer Walters and everything else. And look, what the hell do I know? I'm a 54-year-old white guy. Okay. I mean, I don't,
you look great.
But what I missed though is that they're fawning over this character, and they absolutely love the fact that she is that they can completely, totally, utterly relate to everything she's gone through. And one thing that Jennifer Walters did, she was walked on. She was manipulated by the men in the show. She never really stood up for herself. Even in the courtroom, she never stood up for herself, which I think lacks some verisimilitude. A lot of women are very powerful in the courtroom. They're not so much when they walk out of it.
But she's not. That's the thing, though, right? Like, that is not a commentary on women. That's a commentary on her.
Well, fair enough, but I think the show lacked the ability to even potentially educate the viewers, even though that shouldn't be the purpose. It's a comic book show after all. But if you're going to do that, you're writing a very fine line. If you want to get me into this character, that imagine that we are all of us, and I'm assuming women, you're the same way. We get angry at least once every day. Imagine if you turned green, gained 700 pounds, and were 7 feet tall every time you got angry.
But
imagine
that's
the albatross that would be.
That's Bruce Banner, not Jen Walters.
Well, no, but even Jennifer, though, even what I thought the show lacked was I wanted her to struggle with, even Emil Bronsky. All of a sudden, the last time we saw him, he was the Abomination. All of a sudden, he's the guy knows how to meditate, and he can transform at will between anger-filled power. Suddenly he's got all the power as a result of an anger-induced gamma radiation, but suddenly he doesn't really need the anger anymore. He can just transform conveniently back and forth. I never bought that for a second.
But you weren't supposed to buy it. At the end, he was bad.
Well, but he wasn't really bad. He surrendered. He went to jail voluntarily. I mean, the guy seemed like water off a duck's back. It was, and we were told not to take anything seriously. I mean, the big villain at the end, and maybe I'm wrong about this, but the villain at the end seemed to be Kevin, the Kevin Feige with the cap on the end on the computer. Kevin Feige manipulating all the events. He was the villain of the piece, and I'm thinking like, so I guess we're all sort of played for fools. Like I was trying to figure out what the point of the show was, and I guess maybe I missed it. I don't know.
Well, to me that was a comment. I mean, that last episode was a complete laundry list of the formulaic rut that the MCU has gotten into. And I thought that was balancing out the making fun of the trolls, because it was them saying, yeah, guys, we gave the trolls a griefing, but we're listening. We understand that, there's a formula and it's kind of lazy. We hear you. And I thought that got lost, ironically, in all the anger that, the daddy issues and the this stuff and the that stuff. And, like I said, if the show didn't work for you, that's fine. That's why I brought up Family Guy. It's a show that a ton of people like. Rick and Morty doesn't work for me. I just think we got to be real careful saying something's bad and poorly done and poorly written just because it doesn't appeal to us. I mean, come on. I smash things, people, places, sometimes Matt Murdock. That's objectively a good line.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah.
Let me get this tip real quick. MPause, thank you so much. Oh, no. I already can feel it. It's going to piss somebody off. Jen Walters is being treated poorly by men. Boo-hoo. Bruce's anger came from being constantly chased by the military and at the constant risk of causing chaos to innocence when the Hawk was unleashed. The two are not comparable.
Who says they are, though? Who says they're comparing?
Yeah, and I don't think there's a need to compare. There's a need for Jen to grow because he's already been through this. He can help her.
People just seem to not be able to deal with the fact that she's deliberately flawed. And I think that's part of the reason they did it. And I think that's part of the reason it's a risk. I mean, we think about Stephen Strange or Tony Stark or Star-Lord at the beginning of their journeys. They were womanizing narcissistic assholes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
But she's supposed to be a crack lawyer and got it all locked down right at the beginning. Is that fair? Like, that's part of what I thought they were commenting on, was the fact that when a guy's a hot mess at the beginning of his arc, no one bats an eye. When a woman is, I mean, she fucks up a lot.
Yeah.
As a lawyer. And I think that guys may not recognize how refreshing it is to have permission to be a fuck up in public. That's a very woman thing that's kind of hard to explain. It's a girl code thing that I admit doesn't make a lot of sense. And so I don't expect men to get it because it doesn't make sense. It's this shitty thing women do to each other. And that's the other thing I think that guys didn't, it's like a dog whistle, right? In a positive way. That there was a lot of girl code in the show. So yeah, legit, guys missed a lot of the subtext because they're not raised with it.
Right.
And
I think that's a fair comment. I think that's a fair comment because I admit I must have missed a lot there too because I just didn't understand. I mean, I'm sure I'm sure that
I love the show.
Women go through a lot of.
Did you really?
Guys.
I loved it. I absolutely loved it.
I didn't hate it. I didn't hate it. I'm just saying that I thought I just thought that I never.
I'm not embarrassed to say I watched it. So
yeah, there you go. I just wanted more of a commentary. I just wanted to understand how does this woman deal with her anger, and I thought it was sort of all over the place. And then it was made to be a joke at the end. The 9th episode made everything superfluous, the joke, and that's what destroyed it for me.
That's how women deal with our anger. We minimize and try to pretend it's not happening, and we try to laugh at it, but we're really dying inside.
Yeah, and then we go home and cry. I mean, yeah, to be fair, men go through the same things. It's just not the same things, but
media for men tends to be aspirational.
Yeah.
As opposed to telling a story of what is. And I mean, maybe that's not healthy either. I just think that She-Hulk was all about giving women professionals permission to be hot messes and not have it all together all the time. And oh my God, I so needed that because people jump on me for every decision I make, both publicly and privately. Every time I have to be a boss on something, it's way more unpleasant and personal than I feel like it really should be, especially when I have to manage men. And it's just a thing that we're going to have to come to grips with. And it's hard. It's not going to be easy because it is changing a paradigm, right? Oh, the people freaking out over the twerking.
I
Oh my God. Like that was something that was one people claim that was deliberate bait and wanted to make people freak out. If you freak out over twerking, and when did it come out? 2022, that's a you problem. That's not a show problem. Like seriously, there's a certain amount. It's a dance. It ain't that deep.
I didn't mind
Holy
it.
shit. Like it's Megan Thee Stallion. If it were Michael Jackson, he'd be doing the moonwalk. Megan Thee Stallion's thing is twerking. Period. End of story. Like holy shit.
Like you mentioned earlier, she literally copied her butt. Like we would see these things from Jen, not all the time, but enough to know that that's part of her character. And people were like, think of the children. Like this is I think it said 14 plus. Like, come on. We're grasping at straws here.
Okay. Some of the media in the show, I think, speaks to some of the relative, I don't want to say inexperience, but inexperience is the head of a show from some of the showrunners.
Mm-hmm.
Because some of the comments, you know, you're doing an interview with Polygon and you say you're getting comments from 9-year-olds in a show with sexual content. Of course, Polygon is going to run that as a headline. Of course, they're going to make a big deal out of it. A publicist should have stepped in there and prepped them better. But, you know, we all fuck up that way with the press. We're tired. We get a little too trusting. That stuff like that, it's an understandable mistake. But it, you know, that did not help. But that's, again, Polygon claims to be this big pro-women outlet, and that's what they focused on, as opposed to the greater content of the interview. That's what they chose to highlight. And that is part of what drives the anger, at least for me, is that even people who claim to be supportive, and of course, they're the guys that get the most hostile of anybody if you check them on their shit. Because, hey, I'm an ally, right? Like, oh, so we're never allowed to say, hey, do this differently because you care? Fuck you. You know? But that's part of it. And I do think that, I don't know how to say this. It is true that a certain demographic has been centered in comic book media. That's just undeniable. And maybe they tried to go too far too fast. Maybe. Or maybe it was just because Captain Marvel and Black Widow were so damn tepid. It was a sudden shift. But something being a lot doesn't make it bad. And it being a big shift doesn't make it invalid or unworthy. And I think that what's getting lost in all this fan anger is, again, Bruce Banner's anger is not the same as Jen Walters. And I mean, Jen Walters' anger isn't even the same as Daredevil's. Daredevil's a very angry character. Matt Murdock struggles with anger, and that's why I think he's a really cool foil for Jen. And I hope they do more with that relationship, because that was another thing I thought was played for laughs, and I get it, it's a comedy, but I would have liked that to be a little bit more romantic instead of the barefoot perp walk.
Oh, I love that. They were saying it was like a walk of shame. I think it was a fucking victory walk.
I think it should have been. Like, I don't quite know. I get what they were going for there. They were going for a sight gag. And that's the thing about comedy writing. I do think at times they overthought some of the laugh frequency. And I suspect that if they do get a season 2, because just you felt it start to settle down in the back half. It was less joke, and more, all right, it's just telling a story. They got those jitters off, and episodes 5 through 7 definitely felt more confident than episodes 1 through 4. I guess I'm more forgiving of that than some other people, than just somebody who's a consumer of this stuff, because I've written comedy and I know the pressure of it's got to be funny, it's got to be funny, it's got to be funny. And that's also a difference between American comedy and British comedy. There's this expectation in American comedy that there'd be a laugh every, I think it's like 2.5 minutes, Whereas
Wow.
the British comedy, yeah, it's
Whereas British
really-
comedy isn't
They
funny.
let it breathe. Well,
I'm kidding.
well, British comedy has that awkward, like the original Office.
Great
It was right. Whereas if you watch any American sitcom, I don't know if you guys have seen any of the things where they strip the laugh track out of US sitcoms.
Oh, it's so awkward.
Yeah,
I couldn't
because
imagine
it's
working
really,
like that.
it's really not funny, right? And that's why these single camera hour-long comedies like Parks and Rec and Community, I think are such a revelation for people because they are sort of more British style. But again, comedy is really subjective, and if you don't find it funny, that's fair. There's plenty of things that other people love. I suffered through the Avengers movie. I thought it was not funny and wrecked a lot of the dignity of a lot of the characters by stripping them of character voice. Now, obviously, that's a minority opinion, and I bring it up to show that comedy is subjective. But am I going to say the Avengers was straight up a terrible movie? No, there were parts of it I didn't like, but there were really good action sequences. And again, it was a curtain call. You know, it was a victory lap for actors who breathed life into freaking iconic characters, did an incredible job of it. And just because the director was a douche doesn't mean there's absolutely no merit in the whole thing.
Captain
And
America was perfect.
Oh, sorry,
yeah.
what was that?
Across the board.
Sorry, I didn't. It was muffled.
I was just. Oh yeah, Captain America for me in those was perfect. Like they nailed him across the board. Actually, made him better than the comic books. I think.
And it's funny because
comedy doesn't have a place in the middle of a fight. I mean, that's what annoyed me.
Yeah, but people will say that first Captain America movie was terrible.
What?
It was terrible. It was boring. It was slow.
It was wonderful.
You will find somebody who hates every single Marvel movie ever made. And I thought
Brilliant.
Captain America Civil War was the best ensemble film so far.
Winter Soldier was great. I mean, all the Captain Americas blew the rest of them out of the water as far as
and if you look at audience opinion polling, we are in the minority there.
Wow.
Yeah.
Goes to show you.
Well,
everything's subjective.
Some of the lowest rated Marvel films, the Thor movies. Some of the most profitable Marvel films, the Thor movies. So
what?
Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
Oh,
breaks my brain.
Based on the budgets, those movies rake in dough. They do what they do in those movies for a reason. There's something for everyone. Part of the reason I think Love and Thunder didn't do as well as Loki wasn't there, and you really felt that, but they were so spooked by the romance in that they went to guy humor heavy, I think to its detriment. But every Thor movie is that combination of complete butthead and then really human core. And people say they're a tonal mess. Well, they are. But in a climate where you're dealing with, this is going to be harsh, but you're dealing with comic book fans, and there's a lot of emotionally stunted comic book fans. You have to give them stuff where they know it's okay to laugh.
To be fair, we're all a little crazy.
Well, yeah, we're all a little crazy. And that's the thing. Like, I didn't like the Avengers films. I didn't like Infinity War. I didn't like Endgame. Other people love them. But I didn't like it isn't they were bad movies.
Right.
And exactly. I do think we need to make a distinction. And it's like we were talking about earlier. We need to make it wasn't my thing, or I didn't like it, or I did like it. Something that doesn't require a defense. Because I think it's a more productive conversation when we talk about what did you like, what did you didn't like, as opposed to getting into this like weird second year university college course where we all have to speak in the language of discourse and objective quality. And that's not how entertainment works.
It's comic books, guys. They're comic books.
Yeah.
And I mean, I don't like Grimdark. Other people like Grimdark. I loved the original Shazam movie.
Oh, that was a good one.
Yeah, that was good.
It's brilliant.
People think it was stupid. And yeah, it was stupid.
I like Batman versus Superman. I like Snyderverse.
Oh my God.
I don't
what
hate
is
people
wrong with you?
Oh,
no, I'm just kidding.
See, yeah. I'm used to that. No, I don't. I love getting into conversations as long as you're level-headed and we can talk about the differences. What did you like about it? What did you not like about it? This is great conversation, but what this has been talked about for a couple months now. What I've noticed over the past couple years is you can't dislike something and this guy over there likes it. Now he hates you. Now he's following you on every comment you make and leaving, just picking fights with you. Now it's resorted to insulting. When I'm like, guys, it's a movie, it's a comic book. None of this shit should be taken that seriously. You know what I mean? Like, and we're missing out on intelligent and great conversation by just instantly shutting somebody down because they liked Batfleck and you didn't. Like that's
constructive criticism.
It is exactly.
And
I really liked Batfleck, even though I didn't like the movies overall.
Oh, he was a great Bruce Wayne.
Same. He was perfect.
I thought he was a really good Bruce Wayne. Yeah. But people have to hate him or love him. There's no in between, and I don't get it.
Yeah, it's a weird thing. Like all nerds in general, you know, we started off being bullied. We know what it's like to be, you know, bullied when we're older, so we get a little protective. And when it comes to how we feel about movies or stuff, sometimes because we've been into this for so long, it becomes part of our identity. So it feels like an attack on the person you are. And I think I've noticed that a lot with people. They feel like they're being attacked instead of the IP or the movie, the property being attacked. And it's like, we all need to take a deep breath. We all need to realize that this kind of conversation is pretty freaking normal. And this is what I like, shop talk, right? Like just normal talk. All right, guys, we are going to wrap up, but I'm putting you all on the spot because I want to, we are doing every single month now. Hooded Justice and I are starting a book club. And we are going to every single month go over the book around the end of the month. And I wanted to let you guys know this month it's going to be one of my favorites from last year. And this is going to be contentious as it is. Strange Adventures.
Cool.
So we're going to go over Strange Adventures on the 20th. So 2 weeks, you guys got to read it, and it's going to be super fun. But, Rocky, got any recommendations this week?
Comic book recommendations?
Yes.
Heck yeah, duh.
Wow. Man. Well, I've actually been really enjoying Gotham City year one. I've really enjoyed that with written by Tom King. I think it's a very interesting take on the early beginnings of Gotham City. Slam Bradley, sort of hired by the grandfather of Bruce Wayne, and it's sort of akin to the Lindbergh kidnapping and just the beginnings and the origins of Crime Alley and the beginnings and the origins of a lot of the stuff that we know about of Batman lore. And even a hint that perhaps Slam Bradley might be related to Bruce Wayne. Could that be possible? I mean, there's all kinds of little things. Very well done by Tom King. Tom King's a divisive writer. There are people out there that will dismiss him, and I don't think do much. Frankly, I think do harm to the comic book industry by suggesting he's not a good writer, because I think Tom King pulls people into comics because he's not beholden always to strictly to the continuity. And it invites people in. So I would strongly recommend, frankly, anything by Tom King. And Strange Adventures by Tom King is actually very good too.
It's very good.
Gotham City Year One has been one of my favorite books. I mean, it is really solid every time. Robert, thank you so much. Empause, thank you so much. Sorry. Being a mess in general is part of being a human. Male or female, regardless of skin color, we are all capable of screwing up out of careless of our own making. Dyslexia, I apologize. To be so identified with one gender is a huge flaw in today's society. Isn't being human enough? And we go through different things though, right? Like,
well, and the acceptable script for men and the acceptable for script for women are different. And that's not fair. He's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I do think like some of the shit I wouldn't get that on my channel if I was a dude, I can guarantee some of it. And I have to put up strong boundaries. And keep my mods knowing, I won't deal with sexism. I won't deal with like show me them titties type things. I just won't deal with it. And my mods all know that. And you're not going to get that as a man. So
is there a male equivalent to that? Is there something men get that is equivalent to
can I get a dick pic, please? Maybe? I don't know. I don't know.
Is that as common as like a go-to to try? Because let's face it, they do that just to try to throw you. And the problem with me is, dude,
a lot of people do that though.
You don't have to ask. Like guys do that all the time. Or it's she isn't hot. Like, excuse me, am I trying to be hot? And then you'll get guys going, oh well, 4 and all that stuff. And it's like, guys, come on. There's a lot more. It's just different. It's not better. It's not worse. It's different. And it's fair to talk about the double standards, which cut both ways.
Absolutely.
Right? Yeah. Yeah. As if to prove it in the chat, this typical feminist nonsense you're good at. LOL. A man would not get that.
Yeah. Feminism has become such a dirty word nowadays. It's an insult.
Because it's so feminist to say men also have things they're not allowed to do that women can. So feminist. But
how dare you?
The thing.
Like breastfeed our children.
Well, there you go. Well, I mean, yeah. And then there's Kojima games, but enough said about that. But I just think that if everybody kind of took out those easy digs out of their vocabulary, everything would be so much better. If we just didn't decide to show off small dick energy in chat, we'd be better off.
Yeah. Dead guy, what do you got going on this week at your channel? Any comic book recommendations? Anything? Putting you on the spot?
Man, I'm always going to suggest what I've got going on the channel because I'm smart. I got to admit, the new Aliens art just keeps sucking me in. So Philip Kennedy Johnson is writing some masterpieces with the new Alien series. The new Predator series is doing really well. I checked... Last time I checked in August, I think was the last quarter. I haven't checked recently, but I need to. It was 3rd in sales. So I was like, okay. I got to go, though. I've got a stream starting in...
Now.
10 minutes? Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Oh, my God. Iron Man.
I guess. Comic recommendations. Other than that, I'm reading the new Blue Beetle.
Oh yeah,
really good.
I love it.
I'm already.
That's exciting.
I'm already thinking of cast, so that one's going on the channel. So yeah, if I had any suggestions, say check out the new Marvel Predator, Aliens, and definitely the new Blue Beetle. It's really good.
Yeah,
really.
You need to get
awesome.
You should get a hold of. They do a lot of Spanish speaking in there. Get Hominis or Bianca. Or, you've got a good cast of people you could pull from. Such a good book. Hood of Justice. What do you got going on? Are you got anything good that you're reading?
Strange Adventures.
Smart man.
Wow,
smart man.
Really selling this Strange Adventures book.
Introduced to Tom King and his writing. I haven't read a lot of his work, but it intrigues me. It brings me in. So I'm gonna read Rorschach next or something like that. Killing Time, something just to check it out.
Yeah, Alana, we'll talk about it on the 20th, but Alana, she is the bamps of that book. That's all I'm going to say. Liana, what do you have going on your channel?
This week I'm doing for Manly Monday, how men self-invalidate and the knock-on effects of that. And then by request on Wellness Wednesday, how do you know if you're a loser? This is actually somebody asked me to do a video.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to laugh. I'm sorry.
Well, it's fun. I
hang out with this guy.
Shit. Yeah,
I have to watch that.
I hear you, bro.
I don't use that word, and so I did it because it was a challenge because I don't think in those ways. But it's like, okay, cool. This causes me to stop and think and really break it down, and I love that stuff. And then Two Women Talking continues. We've got a 3-parter. I think it's only going to be 3 parts on rage and the divine feminine. and like
Ooh.
those two women talking. Yeah, ironically.
That's appropriate.
Yeah, and I mean, Hera figures heavily in that, which go back to Wonder Woman Historia.
Yeah.
There's an overlap
Awesome.
there, right? And so that's it for this week. And my comic recommend is a book we actually did on Robert Willing's stream called Fanboy. Which was a Jam series, 6 issues, Sergio Aragone and friends. And it was just so joyous. And I keep thinking about it. And it's this little known gem that more people I think should read, because how do I put this? It's an example of a book where people are flawed, and the ending is not strangely, but the way comics used to be, where it was childlike instead of being childish. And again, it had a really nice message and a really nice moral for people that I thought ultimately validated the average guy in a way that I don't think, you can check somebody's swing and still say, hey, good play, right? And I think that book did this, and it was a real joy to go through, and it was a real joy to go back to a gentler, simpler time in comics where we could all kind of laugh at the silly things we all do as nerds without everything freaking out. So that's my recommendation.
I love it. Kate, what do you got going on your channel this week?
I love
all
Kate's
I have
channel.
really is just like another webtoon discussion focusing on.
I
the
love those
Olympics.
though.
Yes.
And then a 5-minute or less video on Friday. That's all I have until something happens this week. I mean, who knows?
Who knows gonna get pregnant or transition, or who knows? You just never know with comics these days.
Exactly.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah,
Isn't it awful that we're primed that way?
I'm just kidding, because I don't want to get that information out of there about DC. I've defended it, but I can rib at it. Why not?
It's a joke rooted in a truth.
Yes.
Yeah.
And me and Robert, this one thing I want to mention too is me and Robert have a Thunderdome for his birthday, which is on Tuesday. So we're gonna do Batman.
Yeah.
Why Batman is superior when he really thinks it's Superman. But you know what? Batman's gonna win.
That's why Robert wants me on that stream. Okay.
It's all coming
Batman.
together.
That's right.
Batman.
But yes, thank you guys. Make sure you guys check out everybody's link. It is in the description. And we will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.
I can joke, I feel